Strategy is thrown a lot in social media, but what does it actually mean? Most people think that a social media strategy is just posting consistently, but if that were true, everyone would be growing. If you're a business owner trying to figure out your content, or maybe you're a social media manager who wants to post more strategically, then this video is for you. Hello you guys, and if you guys have never been here before, my name is Jasmine Soto. I am an entrepreneur and founder of JASMIN Socials, a social media marketing agency. As always, I always like to say that I'm your online amiga, your prima, and your favorite Latina content creator. For the past 5 years, I have really been very hands-on on helping my clients manage, create, and publish their content in a way that is gonna grow their brand long-term. So in today's video, I wanna break down my 7-step process on how I actually build strategies that actually convert and help your brand grow in the long term. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and let's get on with the video. Before I ever touch any piece of content, I get clear on the business and the goals that we're trying to achieve. Meaning, I think a lot of the times when people are trying to create content for their business, they jump into, let's do the viral ideas, let's do the trendy ideas, but we don't actually get clear on what is your business trying to say, what are the goals behind it, and how is this piece of content actually moving the needle in your business. Some questions that I like to ask my clients to get clear on their business is, what are they selling? Who are they trying to reach? Meaning really creating that avatar, that one person you're speaking to, and what makes you different than everyone in your industry or from all your competitors. If you have ever had the chance to work with me in my business, this is actually something that we really get clear on the onboarding process. Through our onboarding process, we really get clear on asking a lot of questions. We actually send out a form first when you first onboard with us, and we ask you all these questions in the survey to really get clear on your business. Usually during our kickoff call, we get super clear on what did you mean by the answers that you gave us in the form. I think this is super important to get clarity with your client, because a lot of the times we assume that we know what our client is meaning, but when you really start to ask more questions on what do you mean by that, or what do you mean by how you said this, you get really clear on what their definition of things are and how you can use that for content and to again align with the business goals. Step 2 is defining goals that actually matter. For example, a good goal is not going viral, not just posting more posts, but maybe posting 3 times a week. And the reason this is so critical and so important is because I get a lot of clients that come to me and they say, Jasmine, we want to post more. But when we actually get to the nitty-gritty details of, well, how many times we want to show up on this platform, they usually don't know. And that's usually what prevents you from not being able to be consistent with your brand, because we don't have a clear goal. For example, we actually just signed on a law firm that came to us and they said, you know, one of our goals is that we want to position ourselves better on social media so that way our clients can trust us better and we can be more trusted in our industry. And that is super important, because a lot of people think that social media is just for leads or just for views. But social media is almost, I always say this, almost like a portfolio. You have to use it as a portfolio, because when you are, let's just say, depending on how you get your clients, but let's just say you're applying for a government contract, or maybe an employer wants to go look at your social media, or maybe a founder wants to go look at your social media to see that you actually are what you say you are. Your social media is going to be a way for them to be able to trust you more if they see that you have been consistent with your content. Real goals can look like more leads, stronger positioning, better quality clients, posting 3 times this week, goals that are actually tangible and you can actually reach. This is super critical because your content should be tied to a business goal, not just to get engagement. Step 3 is researching your market. So usually after you get clear on what do you want your business to stand for, what are some goals that you actually want to achieve, this is where research comes in, and research is so important. This is where you get very intentional with your strategy by actually looking at who are your competitors, what are content gaps, meaning what are people asking you in your everyday life that maybe your content isn't reflecting. Looking at what your audience actually responds to. And this one is so important, because I think a lot of us founders or CEOs, we like to explain things in the way that we understand them, but this is probably the biggest nugget that you can take from this video. When you really take the time to do your market research, you start to understand the language that your audience uses and how they understand things. So it's so critical for you to actually take the time and look at past content. What worked, what didn't, what are competitors doing, what is working for them, what isn't. So that way you can understand what is the language that your audience is resonating more with. And this is so critical because most people like to skip this step, but this is really what makes your content feel and be strategic. And as a social media marketing agency founder, market research is so important because after you work with several brands, you realize that not every single brand is going to be the same, meaning different brands are going to have different consumers and different audiences, and that's why it's so important for you to do your research and see what people resonate with. I'll just use a quick example, but we signed a law firm back in February, and we're actually working with it was like a prenatal brand that we were working with a couple months ago. So you can see how the language that we're going to be using for people that are becoming moms versus people that are looking for legal services is going to be very, very different, and that's why research matters. And now we go into step number 4, building your content strategy. This is the fun part. This is obviously the part that everyone likes to do, but there are a couple things that I definitely do with my clients as a social media agency founder that takes our content to the next level. Now, building a content strategy can go so in depth, but for the sake of this video, I'm gonna keep it super simple. So one of the things that I actually do with my clients is create content pillars for their brand. Content pillars just means what are some topics that you want your brand to be about. Some examples can be educational videos, brand videos, promo videos, or lifestyle content. This is also where we start to look at your messaging direction and we really start to define how you want to speak and the language that you want to use on your content. Having content pillars for your brand is super critical because that is the missing piece between content that feels strategic versus content that kind of just feels like it's all over the place. Now, during this phase, now that you have your content pillars, this is where we start planning out what are some content themes that you want for the month. So we start planning out, ideas for Monday through Friday. And then once we have our content calendar, that's where you approve the ideas if you are a client, or where you start to look at, now that we have the content ideas down, how do we want to present them? So step number 5 is deciding content types and volume. Okay, so now we already got clear on what you want your business to be known for. We already got clear on some goals that we want to reach. We already did our market research and we probably already have ideas on a content calendar. Now we want to define how do we want to post our content, meaning in what types and in what volume do we want to post. And this is where we get super tactical. We start looking at how many reels do we want to post per month? How many carousels do we want to post per month? How many static photos do we want to post? And this is important because posting more isn't always beneficial. It's about posting consistently and posting in a different mix of types of content that your audience is gonna resonate with. And this is so important because every single content type will have a different goal, meaning reels are actually better for visibility, meaning that you're gonna get more eyes on your content, and carousels are actually better for authority, meaning that you already have an audience and you want them to trust you more. In another video, we'll get into more in depth on what every content type means for your brand and your business. But for the sake of this video, that's why it's so important for you not to post more. Sometimes it's about mixing it up and posting consistently in different formats. So now heading into step 6, creating content and getting content approved. Now, based on the level of team and resources that you have, this might look a little bit different for everyone, but for the sake of this video, we're just gonna go ahead and say that you are a solopreneur that's making all the content yourself. Now, when I first started, I would do this in a different manner of ways. So you guys know that back in the day, I would share a lot about how we would record like this for YouTube videos. And when we would record for YouTube videos, especially long form, meaning it's usually between 5 to 10 minutes or longer, I used to like batching content and I still really do enjoy it. And batching content is great for you when you have limited time And you want to batch record content ahead of time so that way you don't have to be spending as much time setting up and recording it later. What I mean by that is batching content can look like you making 3 to 4 videos in one sitting, so that way you don't have to be taking time out of your week every single week to film. Maybe you record once a month and you record 4 videos. So then that way you have those 4 videos for the rest of the month to be working on. And you do that once a month, and it's like a clear system that helps you stay consistent. Now, let's say that you have a little bit of a bigger team and maybe batching content for you doesn't work because you know that your team has a select date and time that they want to film, and you guys want to be very intentional with what you want to film. My best recommendation for creating content at a time is just being prepared with the script, being prepared on what type of content is this, what is the goal behind it, and who is doing the execution in terms of who's editing the content, who's getting approved with whoever it needs to be approved, whether that be the CEO, the marketing director, a brand, creative director. It's very, very important to be clear on those details, because if you just record content without knowing, what is the execution process looks like, that's how you end up with content on your Google Drive for months and months, and it never goes anywhere. So it's so important that if you have a small team, whether that be an assistant, whether that be a marketing director, you get super clear on who's handling those roles. And if you don't have a social media manager, then lucky for you, my brand and my company actually offers this as a service. So if you guys have questions on how we can help you with your social media needs, then just go ahead and visit the link down below. Now, the last step to creating and getting content approved, especially as a solopreneur, usually your content is just getting approved by you. But when you have a small team, usually content is getting approved by the CEO, the marketing director, maybe a creative director. So it's so important that not only do you execute the content, but then you have a plan to send it to them and make time for feedback and revisions. Now, this is actually something that I do with my own clients. We actually create the content for them and we send it to them 1 to 3 days in advance before we want to go ahead and post it, sometimes even sooner than that. So that way they have enough time to look at the content, look at the direction that we wanted to go in, and provide me feedback before we actually post it on their social media. Now, I did want to include this in this video because I think feedback, especially as a social media manager, at the beginning, it can be frustrating because you have a creative vision, you want it to go your way, but after 5 years of working with so many different brands and so many different founders and CEOs, you start to learn that feedback isn't always a bad thing. Feedback can be a really great starting point of how can we make our content more on brand or better going forward. So I think that feedback is one of those things that I wanted to touch on, where at the beginning, if you're managing a lot of your content yourself, meaning you're creating it for your own brand, I wouldn't be so worried on how can we get the best piece of content out there. It's more so just put it out there so you can be consistent. Now, over time, as you start growing your team and as your standards for your brand's content starts increasing, it's so important that you do make time to create better quality content. And the reason I'm saying this is because my boyfriend is actually a video production company, and so he records a lot of content for seven plus figure brands. And the reason this is so important is because you have to be realistic with how much time you have as a solopreneur versus someone that has a team. And so as you start growing your team, it's just something to keep in the front of your mind that quality content is always going to do the best. And finally, step 7. This is where we launch, track, and optimize. Okay, so I know I said that every single thing in this video was important, but this is so important. And the reason that this is so important is because this is really what helps you double down on the content that is helping your business. Now, this is where I say that social media managers are really heroes wearing capes, because there's so many tiny things that people don't realize make such a huge difference in creating a system for your brand. What I mean by that is, if you can schedule your content ahead of time, that alone is a system that helps you stay consistent. Now, this is something that a social media manager can help you with. This is something that my company actually handles for all my clients, where we actually schedule the content for them, so that way my clients don't ever have to lift a finger up. This is also where you want to start tracking performance on the reels that you posted, on the carousels that you posted, on the stories, on the static photos, so that way you can see what is doing the best and what are people engaging with. This is also where we take time to do monthly calls with our clients, where we talk about everything that they liked, that they didn't like, and what we can do better for the following month. Now, as a solopreneur, you can do this yourself by having a monthly call with yourself and treating yourself like a client. Make time every month to look at your content and see, what did you like about your content? What did you not like? What got the most engagement? What you want to double down on? This is so important because, especially as a founder and CEO that runs a company, it's so important that you treat yourself like a client, because if not, you will find yourself in a hamster wheel, always doing client work and not actually focusing on the things that move the needle in your business, which are CEO tasks like this. So that is the 7-step process of how I build strategies that actually convert. Now, most people think that social media is just posting a piece of content real quick, but through this video, you can see that social media takes a lot of work. Social media is a full-time job, and most people think that it's just posting pretty content, but when you actually treat it intentionally, you will start to see the results that you want from social media. So if you want support building a strategy that actually helps your brand long term, then send me a message down below or check out my website where you can see our services that my agency provides. But again, you don't have to figure it out alone. My name is Jasmine, owner of JAS Socials, a social media marketing agency. And after working with 100+ brands, 7-figure companies, I can assure you that results do not happen overnight, but when you stay patient, you will get the results that you want and need. Again, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye, you guys.